Viz seems to be killing JoJo, but why? Black bars covering the artwork, spelling mistakes, and downright ugly cover redesigns, with fan translations from 15 years ago doing better in all of these aspects. So why is it like this? So I recently started rereading Part 7, due to Viz Media, the distributors of JoJo in the West, finally releasing Steel Ball Run's manga for the first time ever in English. Part 6, and JoJo as a whole coming to Netflix, has brought a lot of new fans to the series, but the story and tone, they're just so well done in Part 7. As I kept reading, I started to notice these inconsistencies. It started with just text errors, as before the race even starts, you're hit with this 90-year time jump. The original Japanese saying the date is September 1890, while the English version says September 1980. And as I got to every new chapter, these Vizisms started to creep in. So much of Araki's art was just covered up. There now being these massive black backdrops to make way for the English text, with them obscuring elements that were there in the original Japanese release. Having read the part, I know what's to come, as there's so many great chapter spreads that are just going to be covered up by these black bars. And I'd even started to notice them in previous volumes that I own. For example, when I was putting the free cam panels of the examples on screen, this one massively made it a lot harder to see the landscape underneath. And it's not just the black bars, because in the English version, some of Enya's fingers are just totally missing. This obviously being done to fit the translated text bubble. But when they need to do the opposite, and fill in parts that the English text doesn't cover up, we get this weird duplicating effect. Part of the panel's borders are accidentally cloned into his fingers like this, making the artwork look totally messy. So it got me thinking, like, why is it like this? What happened? I mean, I know what they're doing here. They're probably using the healing brush or something similar, which works by analyzing the whole image and picking what it thinks should go there. And it's used all over, but sometimes it just messes up and you get stuff like this. Or here with Sandman's mouth appearing to be copied and pasted over this part. And in some cases, even the Japanese text is still there. Now you're probably thinking, well, you keep showing the English version done correctly next to it. And that's the weird thing. These are actually from fan translations, but these were created at least 15 years ago, before these official ones. As if you don't know, Steel Ball Run isn't new, or not new in JoJo terms. So how these mistakes are getting past the QA team is baffling. And if it weren't for this release, I wouldn't have even realized that they've been doing this in every previous release of the manga too. And I went to try and find these online, and the links from the Reddit, as well as other sources, all led me to these fan translations. So I went to my local bookstore, and there they were, these black bars again. But it wasn't those that concerned me the most, it was the covers. I mean, it's kind of the reason I stopped collecting them after Part 3, as after Part 4, I hadn't really been paying attention to them. But these Part 6 ones look awful in comparison. They have this horrible green color on every one of them. I mean, just look at this compared to the original Japanese release. And this is on every volume now. I don't know, it's just kind of disrespectful to take the art and smash other colors onto it, or confine it to these boxes. Araki had designed them to fit a canvas, and these are just as much a part of the story as the panels within it. So to start changing that to fit conventions, it's kind of like not very JoJo of them. Not to mention, color is super important. It's even more important to JoJo. The covers sometimes even change the logo's color in the Japanese version, so it fits Araki's compositions and color choice better. There's like a reason to all of this. It's not just epic, crazy color change JoJo. Listen, I might be getting too deep into this, but there's a reason for JoJo's crazy color choice. Heck, their crazy art choice too. As viewing it within a store, they grab your attention. Picture a Japanese person in a bookstore. They're looking at a lineup of all the manga to pick from. And then they see this hyper-stylized Giorno doing that Amy Wesson pose. And while not every cover's gonna get them, that one will. And then just that one will then get them into the series. But with these ones, you're actively repelled by this mismatch of colors. And it goes completely against what Araki's trying to do with not trying to give them a set color palette. These ones are the green ones, these are purple, and because of this, they can't use that color again on a volume. That's Part 6 green, yellow is for Part 5, blue is Part 3, so after 6 of these parts, they've got no good colors to use. So that's the question, what does Part 7 go with? Red, orange, and green. Like I said, this is the latest one, which is not bad at all, apart from the ugly strip here. Like, it's almost there, you've almost got it, but like, what I don't get is, isn't the Steel Ball Run logo already in English? Why did they change it to this? They also had this cool stylized steel ball in the bottom right, which is now this thing. It's not even got any contrast to it. It's hard to read. That's the most basic thing you need to get right. But because they're having these attempts to fix it now, there's no consistency from part to part. We have 3 styles to these volumes now, and within those styles, they have different styles. Part 1 using Part 8 style with the re-release style, Part 4 using a combination of that with the original art in these box designs, and now Part 7's using this strip design with the classic Hero something Araki. They're using Araki's artwork. Basically, they keep changing their minds what they want to do with the designs. And it kind of speaks for itself when you see them all on a shelf like this. I know you guys probably just read it online anyway, but can you think of a worse manga release than this? So again, I get back to the question, why did they do it like this? Well, it started with Shueisha, the publishers of JoJo in Japan. They published these things called Jojoniums, but at the time, only in Japan. And this was for the 20th anniversary of JoJo, and were only for part 1 to 3. And they're actually pretty cool. They had this original artwork by Araki in his latest style. Some panels were redrawn, and we even got the occasional bonus commentary.
Did Dio and Danny make up? Just for the covers. It's hard drawing characters from part 1 after all this time, but it feels like meeting up with old friends.
Now, this came out from 2012 to 2014, and it was in 2015 that Viz, again the publishers of JoJo in the West, started to publish them in English. But because they had never published part 1 or 2 before, these ended up being the only versions people could buy. Here's what the Japanese covers look like, and then here's how the hardback English covers looked. And honestly, they look pretty cool. We have a little Danny and Dio with the 3 moles, and a lovely Liverpudlian house in the middle. I prefer the charm of the original, and going back to what I said before, it's what Araki at the time intended the cover to actually look like for his first manga release. The problem here is, because this is the first release of these in English, even if the cool new art brings a new reader in with its cover, the inside art is in a completely different style. Now, this is fine for Japan because it's a heavy part of Japanese pop culture. But here in the West, especially before the anime, not as many people knew about JoJo, which I know firsthand because there was literally only Zawaldo memes and OVA Dio AMVs. So this being the first thing readers see is super confusing. As say there's a non-JoJo fan in a store, and this is their first time viewing the series, and they see Phantom Blood. So first off, the cover is different. Okay, whatever, they get over it. And they keep reading, and they're like, oh cool, they're making references to like these cool 80s bands, clearly changing their names slightly. Until they get to the later parts, and then they're like, who the fuck is Zipperman supposed to be referencing? So now we get to the name variants. Due to copyright, localizers change the names of characters and stands.
Moody Jazz!
So because of this, we get names like Zipperman instead of Sticky Fingers, or Flaccid Pancake instead of Limp Bizkit. And while it doesn't change the plot, for fans, it truly takes the soul out of these iconic references, sort of dulling the unique charm of the series. And again, when I was reading part 7, even the horses aren't safe. Now, Hammond Beat made a video addressing this stuff, and found that it's all bullshit and contradictory.
If we take a look at the French manga, which covered part 5 in the mid-2000s, it uses all of the original names. And the same is true in the Italian, Spanish, German, and Brazilian Portuguese versions. Also, unlike the French, the German dub still uses the original names without any issues. So once again, we see that the whole situation is needlessly confusing and inconsistent.
You should check out the full videos, it's pretty informative. But this could be scaremongering from like the PS2 game, as it was alleged that the references to Prince was the reason that game never came out in the West, even though there was proof in magazines that this game was getting translated into English. But it ended up affecting pretty much every reference name in the series to date. Well, at least the ones that are spelled correctly. Yeah, so on top of that, there's the spelling errors. Look, I'm shocking at spelling myself, and this is kind of like a minor issue to the reader. But it's the fact that in the Viz release of part 5, during the Mirror Man fight, Fugo looks at a trash can to know if he's in the mirror world or not. But the chapter of the fight keeps switching between the mirror world and the non-mirror world, and this trash can is kind of central to the whole thing. But they're so inconsistent with what they want to do with this thing. Sometimes it's translated to English, sometimes it's just the Japanese from the original, and sometimes it's a mix of both. I read part 5 a while ago, and the translations weren't perfect. But to a new reader, this could be confusing because it relies on being reversed. Now, I'm not saying the fan translations that we have now are perfect. Even those get things wrong. With the translations being by the fans, some stuff is lost. Like they skip a whole sentence here. And because there's different translations by different groups, it starts to spread misinformation about, as different versions of the same story creates this disconnect. And I mean, Viz's translations are not a replacement for the Japanese or anything, but are doing the best job at bridging that gap. But the main problem is that it's physical media. The fan translations can just update, and they do update them. A great video you should stay away from if you're only anime only points out.
With the help of some of the community's translators, we found that the English scans had a small typo. Even if someone really tried to understand this arc's timeline by paying close attention and rereading, it still wouldn't make sense because of the typo, but thankfully since now it's been fixed.
So because Viz's releases are not just digital, meaning if you buy a copy and you have one of these errors, you have it forever. And I actually have one of these errors, as I went back to look at my own volume of part 1, and the error was there. And actually another video you should check out is Xforce's video on the release of the JoJo manga, as in it he shows that his part 2 manga has this weird colorization on the copies. And on my own Part 2 volume, it's almost this pink color. Also another quick one, the logo changed in between releases, and that also just adds to it. And plus, they're pretty expensive too. These are $25 each. That means if you want all of JoJo released up until this point, it would be $1,175. I mean, they're more because they're hardback. So with paperback, you can usually get some good deals if you buy a box set. A good example of this is the Full Metal Alchemist set. You can usually get around only $150. And this is such a cool box set. You get a little poster and stuff like that. And it's also by Viz Media. So how much are the JoJo paperbacks? $0, because that isn't even an option. Yeah, you can't actually buy paperback versions of JoJo. And the reason you want this paperback is because it's closer to the Japanese original release of the manga. I mean, it is way bigger than the Japanese tankobon release, but if you compare that to the hardbacks, it's tiny. And here's Ultra Jump, just for good measure. These tankobons are actually the standard release for JoJo, first being in these massive Ultra Jump volumes, and then shrunk down into portable books that people can carry around. But getting back to the Viz paperbacks, it's slightly bigger than that. This is because the West is not usually carrying around manga. It's here to just kind of go on a shelf. But if you notice, the Full Metal Alchemist one is pretty close to the original. And if we look inside, no black bars. It seems Viz weren't trying to put their spin on it with these volumes. Same with the 3-in-1 covers. They just used the full versions of the cover art and it looks amazing, which is a real shame because the Jojonium I'm holding does look kind of stylish and cool. And I was totally happy with my purchase back then. And this one I'm holding in my hand is almost 10 years old. 2015, wow. Oddly, the original release of Part 3 was in 2005, 10 years earlier than that. So yeah, they released Part 3 first, as due to the OVA adaptation. Viz finally started to begin localization, starting with the Stardust Crusaders arc. And would you look at that, it looks a lot better. The only problem was that very same OVA, as it didn't see its final volume till 2010. And this was because of the censorship. There was a scene of Dio reading a Quran, even though this wasn't even in the manga. But Viz and Shueisha halted manga shipments for over a year due to this controversy. I don't know if Studio APP put this in intentionally, or they just typed in Egyptian text and this is what came up. This was then a sort of knock-on effect, as things then had to be redrawn. The most infamous case involving the dog deaths in Part 3.
My dog is dead!
Take the Yellow Temperance fight, for example. The dog's gruesome melting and decapitation had its angle completely changed to obscure the severing. But during the Death 13's murder of the dog during the dream sequence, in the original, Kakyoin awakens next to a dog. But in 2006, he wakes up next to a rat. It actually oddly works for the scene being a dream and all, but it completely changes the context. As for those wondering, outside of the dream, the little boy says,
"Who put that enormous rat corpse in front of my house?"
The biggest mystery is, I couldn't really find any info on who actually made the giant rat. I mean, I can only think it was Araki, which is funny to picture him taking time from drawing Steel Ball Run at the time, just to draw this giant rat. More serious ones were removing moss-like buildings before Viz started resuming publishing. So they're not exactly rushing, but why do we keep seeing these errors? Well, it comes down to their release schedule. Part 7 isn't ending till at least 2027 based on this release schedule. And even with a more consistent quarterly schedule, Part 8 Jojonium might not finish until 2032. And Part 9 JoJo Lands is already out in Japan, pushing this deadline even further. Viz claims the costs are higher, or there's supply chain issues. So how is it then that they managed to release hugely popular series like Chainsaw Man and Jujutsu Kaisen with such consistent frequency? Like, I'm genuinely asking. We're talking digital chapters often releasing weekly and physical volumes hitting shelves every 2 to 3 months for those titles. For JoJo, we're currently on an every other month release for these hardcovers. This means it's going to take years to catch up to the Japanese releases, while other series are practically hot off the presses. It makes you wonder if it's truly a production issue or a matter of priority and resource allocation within Viz Media itself. But isn't Part 9 good enough for co-releases with Part 7? JoJo's getting quite big now. And I mean, Viz isn't all bad, as these text errors I mentioned at the start have been fixed in the online versions. So it shows that they are listening. And this isn't just about nitpicking. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is a global phenomenon now, and is one of the most influential manga of all time. So its Western release should reflect that status, not detract from it. At the minute, I don't really want to support this, and I'd rather just import the Japanese volumes. So what can we do? If you agree that JoJo deserves better, share this video and let Viz Media know, respectfully, your thoughts on social media, because only speaking up can we hope to see the quality this series truly deserves. So let's make a change within the community. Check out these 2 videos for more on the Viz and JoJo situation.